What's up, family? How are you guys doing? I hope you guys are doing amazing, just as I am. I feel great right now. And today I wanted to talk to you about LSD and how it affected me and woke me up. So, to start this video, I want to make sure that YouTube knows that I am not glorifying drugs. I am not recommending anybody to follow in my footsteps and do the drugs I've done. I'm not saying LSD is a good compound or a bad compound. I'm just giving my educational and experiential documentation on what happened. Okay? So I want to start off the story. Pretty much I think 16. I was either 15 or 16 when I started smoking weed, right? I started smoking out of a dab pen, and the first couple times I tried it, I didn't get nothing off it, right? I didn't feel anything. I'm like, ooh, I'm high. I might be a little high. I wasn't. And then one time I took one big hit off a dab pen and I was completely gone. And from then on, I just became a big weed smoker. I would pretty much smoke equivalent. I could probably smoke an equivalent of an eighth every day if I really wanted to, although I tried not to. I liked the introspection that weed gave me and just the dopamine feeling. I liked it. And people in my family, my older sister always talked about how she tried acid, which is the same thing as LSD, same thing. Um, she said that she went outside one day on acid. She only took it a couple times. She went out on acid, looked up in the sky when it was snowing, and she was like, fucking mesmerized. And ever since she told me that story, I always told myself I wanted to try acid one day. So one day, I got the opportunity. One of my friends from Cleveland, he hooked me up with a couple acid tabs, white on white, little tabs about that big that had LSD on them. You put them under your tongue, and it gets you fucked up. That's what I heard. I read up on it, and they said on a bunch of Reddit threads that I looked at on LSD, they said not to take too much for your first time. They said a lot of people take half a tab, some people take a full tab, right? I decided I'll go in the middle of that. I took like 3/4 of a tab. I cut that up, put it in my under my tongue, and I sat there. I was waiting for like 30 minutes and I felt nothing. Then all of a sudden, I started laughing really, really, really hard. And it was like everything around me was so hilarious for no reason. It was like I was just laughing. I didn't have a reason to laugh. I just was. It's like something in my body activated the laugh chemical, and I just started laughing over and over for no reason. So that happened for a little while, and I remember everything I was looking at would be incredibly vivid. Like the complexity of it would be crazy. Like my sister had this AirPod case, and it was gold. It had sparkles on it, and I was staring at it for like 45 minutes, completely like fucking crazy because it looked like fucking gold, diamonds, and shit. I was going crazy. It looked so beautiful. I was just staring at it for 40 minutes. And then this was about 2 hours in. And acid trips last about 12 hours. So I was just at the beginning. And I was sitting on a couch, high out of my mind on acid. And this one kid that I was hanging out with named Quinn. We can call him Quinn for now. That's not his real name, but we can call him Quinn. And I don't know why he was doing this, but he was like fucking with me. He was messing around with me. He would just be talking to the people around us. We were in a group of four, and I was the only one tripping. Everyone else was sober. Um, for some reason, he would just start talking to people, and then I was like tripping out of my mind. I was like this, and then I would look at him, and he would be staring at me like this. Every time I looked away, I was like, he's being goofy. I looked away, and every time I looked back, he was every time. So somehow it got in my head that this kid Quinn was controlling the simulation of my world somehow, and he was the god. So I started calling him God and becoming a little freaked out and walking around, but at the same time, I was so high I did not give a shit. I was staring at the walls and they were moving a little slight shit. And then pretty much that's just how the night went. I was a little bit paranoid going around the house trying to look around corners. I'm like, I feel like there's something here. I was just looking at what I thought was God. He wasn't. He wasn't God. He was just fucking around. I was high. So that night ended, and when I came down, I was just sitting there kind of stunned, extremely tired, just out of it, right? So that was my first experience with acid. So like an intelligent person, I assumed that 3/4 of an acid tab was all that acid had to offer, right? So I went home and I had the rest of the acid, right? I had a tab and a half left. And I guess those tabs were better dosed than the ones I had because I took them and I was very high. I was still pretty much similar experience to what I had before. This one was at my own house. I took the tab and I was with two of my friends, two female friends, and we were chilling out in a room and I was high as hell looking at the walls. I went to take a shower and there were like little squiggly lines around they were like the design of the shower, right? So I was staring at those for like 30 minutes and then I got out and it was pretty much just the same trip as before. Very, very similar. It was even less paranoid. So about hour 10, 11, I was still high, but I just kind of wanted to go to sleep at that point. I didn't really feel like I was just tired. So like a smart man, I decided to bring out some marijuana, some weed, and I took out a dab pen, right, which has high THC, very high THC. It was like 91% THC, which is a fuck ton of THC. And like a smart person, I decided to drag that fucker as long as I could. I dragged it out to the max like 4 or 5 times. I'm just thinking, oh, I'm gonna be high and on acid. It wasn't like that. Not at all. It was not like that. As soon as I was sitting there in my room, and suddenly I felt this really off feeling as soon as the weed kicked in. And you know the feeling when, let's say you've been running all day, you haven't eaten much, you haven't drank much water, and you're pretty much like, you feel like you're gonna pass out from the heat. That feeling came over me like a fucking, like crazy. It went over me and it was like, I thought I was starting to like die or have a stroke or something. I started to feel that, and then it came over me, and all at once my heart started fucking pounding fast as possible. It was the only thing I could hear. It was like echoing in my head, in my ears, all this shit. And at the same time that was going on, well, here, I'll say, my heart was beating so hard that I felt like I was gonna die. Like straight up. I thought I was having a heart attack, and I'm like, what the fuck do I do? So I laid down on my bed. I sat there and relaxed. And my thought process was so gone. I was telling the people around me to convince myself that I was real and that I was on acid and I wasn't going crazy or losing my mind or dying. I was like, remind me every 15 seconds that I'm on acid or else I'm gonna go crazy. I was like that. And I was sitting there panicking, and for some reason, it felt like I was being pulled up to the ceiling. Like the ceiling was trying to pull me up, and I was fighting to keep myself down. And I feel like in the end, that probably made the experience worse. But at the time, I didn't know what I was doing. So I was looking at one of my friends, and I noticed how fucked up my vision was. I wasn't even paying attention to the vision. I looked at her, and it looked like she had three faces facing in this direction, and this direction all at once. I'll put an image on the screen. It's like a DMT visual. I swear it looked like this. I swear it looked like that. So she was looking like that, and everything was. It was weird because everything was still there. Like my room and all this shit, the bed I was on was still there. The people were still there. They just looked completely different. And for some reason, there was this weird visual thing where it felt like I was in like a small box of like mirrors, like transparent mirrors and shit. And if I would look around, there would be like a reset and the world would be normal. But if I looked at something and paid attention on it, sorry. If I was looking at something and I was paying attention to something, It's like the outside of my peripheral vision would slowly close in with that a 3D, like a higher dimensional mirror. Like it felt like I was in a box, like I was trapped in like a little box of just myself. I don't know how to explain it. But it was like every time I would look away, it would close in and completely take over my vision. I would look away and the room would reappear. And then slowly the mirror would come back. Look away. And I just kept doing that process for like good hour until the dabs wore off. And toward the end, I realized I gotta piss really, really bad. So I'm like, can you guys come with me? You don't gotta come in the bathroom with me, but just stay outside in case I'm like fucking, I start yelling or something. I didn't know what was gonna happen. So I went, took a piss, and then washed up like normal. I made sure not to look in the mirror because I would have freaked me the fuck out. I went back into my room after pissing, and then I sat in a different position in the room, and suddenly it was like everything was really, really calm. It wasn't as panicky. I wasn't scared anymore. It wasn't like I was in a mirror world. It was just like normally what you would think on acid. Like I would look at the ground. I think the weed wore off. That was the thing. I would look at the floor and it had this weird carpet, and the carpet would like flow up and down and flow up and down like it was breathing. And the colors were way different. Like everything was like an orange tint. And the trip got stronger after I smoked the weed. Like once it wore off, the trip itself was stronger, but it was just the LSD in my body. That's what I was feeling. So that experience ended, and I told myself I'm never ever doing acid again. And being like a 17-year-old, almost 18, I didn't really follow that for that long. So I would say about a couple months later, I got 7 tabs of acid, and I decided I'm gonna take small tabs, or I'm gonna take small 1 dose tabs with no weed this time, and keep doing that over and over again. And I noticed that every time I would do it, I would get a much stronger experience than I used to. But it wouldn't be as terrifying or as confusing as the weed and acid mix, but it was a lot stronger. And I always found myself not being able to relax during the experience and actually take it in, and instead trying to ground myself and stay out of it, and trying to like keep my mind, which is like the opposite of what I'm trying to do with the drug. I'm trying to go out of my mind and go crazy and fucking figure out new shit in my life. Like look at myself from a different perspective that I never had before, you know? So it wasn't working, so I decided, I don't know why I decided this at this point, but instead of being like a normal human saying, okay, it's just not the thing for me, I'm just not going to do this drug anymore, or I'm going to look inside myself and figure out why this problem is, I decided, no, I'm good. I'm going to double the dose. I'm going to put 2 tabs. And that was the craziest experience of my entire life. So I took the 2 tabs, and I'm waiting for it to kick in, and I turn on the SpongeBob movie, you know, the one with Shell City and King. I don't know what the king's name is, but he's the bald guy, and he has Princess Mindy. I don't remember his name. That movie. I was watching that, and I was waiting for it to kick in, and then suddenly I feel kind of lightheaded, spaced out, but it's not so much like the acid feeling. It's like it was the acid doing it, but it didn't really feel like what acid did before. So I closed my eyes, opened them up, and I looked over my desk for I didn't think of anything, but I looked over my desk, and my desk is normally like, I would say, chest height, like here when I'm sitting down. I swear to you, it was like on the same level as the floor. It looked like it was part of the floor, and I'm like, what the fuck? And then I look to my left, and I'm looking at my bed, and my bed's like above my head. I'm like, what the fuck? So I'm like, this is cool as hell. This is really interesting. I'm gonna get into this. I'm gonna see what more that has to offer. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna watch the SpongeBob movie right now. I'm already like crazy in my mind. So I'm watching SpongeBob movie, and SpongeBob and Patrick, they get in their like Krabby Patty vehicle, and they go down into or I don't know if it's Shell City yet, but it's like the dangerous part. And they see this woman, I think she had an ice cream stand. And they were like talking, and then she went like weird, nasty, fucking creepy, she turned into like bones or something, and everything around her turned to bones. And then I don't know why, but I looked around and it was like I could see the atoms of every little object. It was like they'd be covered in things about that small, and each one of them was like the own individual bone from the SpongeBob movie I was watching in like my real life. So I was like, what the fuck? So that happened, and then over time it progressively got stronger and stronger and stronger, and it got so strong that I couldn't really think anymore. I couldn't really focus, so I just laid down in my bed, and um, it felt like I was like spiraling away from this planet. I didn't even know where I was going. Like I felt like I was going somewhere that I wasn't supposed to be at, or I'd never been to before. I would say I felt like I was going there. Like it was. I felt like I was falling into infinity. So I was laying on my bed, and then the peak kicked in, and I'm starting to panic a little bit. I'm starting to freak out. But at this point, I've done acids like plenty of times, so I know how to ground myself. So I went to YouTube and I typed in bad trip video, right? So I was watching the bad trip video and I felt a little calm, and then the power fucking went out. In my, the power didn't go out. I kicked a cord under my computer and it went out, and I couldn't figure out how to turn it back on because I was so fucked up. So I'm on my phone, just looking through my phone. I'm like, okay, if I could just look at my phone, I'll be fine. So I looked at my phone, and my mom knew I was tripping. Like I told her beforehand, I'm like, I'm gonna be tripping today, and she's like, "How you doing, bud?" She texted me. I texted back, "I'm doing good, but I'm tripping balls." And then she responds, "That's not good." And then my phone dies. As soon as it texts, it's like, "That's not good." Phone dies. So reading "that's not good," it registered in my mind like, what's not good? What's not good? What's going on? Is something bad happening? And then I slowly spiraled into like feeling like I was stuck in infinity and I was dying and shit. So this time, instead of completely freaking out like I did on acid and weed, I said, fuck it. If I die today, so what? Let it happen. I'm gonna close my eyes and let acid take me. Just fucking pull me away. And I would say around hour 6 or 7, this happened. I was laying in my bed, and then I kind of lost complete track of what was going on. And then it was like I woke up 3 hours later, even though I knew I wasn't asleep. It was like time passed, or it was like when you drink alcohol and you get wasted and you black out and you don't remember what happened. It was like that. It was like I didn't know what even happened before. It's like my memory is wiped. But I remember my trip ended and it was calming down, and then I went downstairs and it was like everything was glitching kind of. Like I could put it was like if you put your hand through water, it's like that little bit of like effort it takes to move. It was like that kind of in the actual world. And I went downstairs, I had food. I went back upstairs and did not sleep for the rest of the night because I was so fucking fucked up in my head still. But then I felt like I was different, you know? I felt like something in me really, really changed that day. And the day after, I went out and I think I went to school. I think this was on the weekend, like a dummy. I went to school, and then people just felt like robots, you know what I'm saying? It felt like I could predict everything they were doing or everything they were gonna say, and I knew exactly how to win every argument. It was like I knew how to do everything. And I believe what I did there was wake up. I became aware of my ego. And I saw the shit that I was doing that was fucking crazy. Like, I kept repeating cycles over and over and over again of doing the same thing, thinking about the same things over and over again. I became aware of that, and I became aware of that in other people. So after that, I haven't taken acid since then. This was like 10 months ago, I would say. Ever since then, I was able to discern between the ego and the higher self of myself and other people. And when I take acid, it's like the effect becomes so easy to see to me. It's like I can see that people are robots, or that they're not like fully aware and conscious. And at the, don't get it twisted though. It wasn't all just positive. That time when I was taking acid all the time, bro, I felt like I was like going crazy. You know what I'm saying? It was I would sit in my room and start thinking about crazy ass shit. Like what if everything's a simulation? What if nothing exists? What if blah 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 blah? And I realized that what I was doing, I was just sitting in my room just thinking over and over in my head all the shit that can go wrong with the world and not the shit that can go right with the world. And I noticed that that was my ego speaking to me. So once I realized that I could just break from my ego and live in my higher self and just be myself and not give a shit about what other people say or what's going on in the world or anything, I realized that I could just be happier. I could just be a lot more relaxed, happier. And I think all of that's acid, even though the none of my acid experiences except the first one were even positive, I would say, like enjoyable. They all taught me something. Like acid's not a drug to where you take it just to have fun and get that dopamine rush. I didn't get that shit. For me, it was like every time I would take acid, I'd be put in my own personal hell, and I had to fight through it. And then once I finally gave in, I'm like, why am I fighting? Why? What's the point of me fighting to stay in control? There's no point. Once that happened, it's like the universe took over. It's like God took over and showed me the path that I needed to be on. It was like the universe was guiding me to this point by putting me through negative experiences. So those negative experiences really shaped who I am. And I feel like if I were to go back on acid right now and try it again, I feel like I wouldn't feel uncomfortable at all because of the meditation I've done and everything. And it was hard for me to really grasp all this information that everything was a good thing until I started meditation, until I started fasting, until I started doing all this stuff I'm doing now. It was like there was a bunch of the acid brought up a bunch of files that I never sorted through in my head. I never sorted through them, and I needed to sort through them to get better. And once I started doing that, doing meditation and all this stuff and like actually working on my inner self, I realized just how strong acid made me. And I feel like I definitely went through some PTSD during that point because I couldn't even go on elevators. I couldn't even smoke weed without feeling extremely, incredibly anxious. Like the environment around me was going fucking crazy. Like I was tripping again. I felt like I had PTSD, like flashbacks and stuff. But once I got over that, it was like the most freeing thing ever. I feel so happy and I feel so energized. And I feel like if even if I lost my way again and I couldn't even get it through meditation, acid is always there to give me perspective. Even if it's not a good thing to do, like mentally, it helps me. And I think it brought me more awareness than I ever had, that I can think outside the box and really feel the energies, because I was always an analytical person. Before acid, I was always very analytical. And then acid really makes you feel the energy of everything around you and how anything in your thoughts can completely shape your internal thought process. Like, if I take acid and then I think about anything negative, that's an entire spiral. So from that, I learned that whatever I focus on in my mind becomes reality, to me at least. So that really gave me perspective on that. And I was thinking of trying acid again sometime. Um, I don't know. If I eventually do, I'll make an update video on what I learned this time. But these are my experiences with acid. Overall, I think it was very positive for me, even though I had to go through a lot of negatives. But that's what they call it, a trip. It's ups and downs and ups and downs. Overall, I think it was a very healthy for my psyche and perspective. And I hope if you guys have a similar experience in the future, or you already have, I hope you let me know. We can discuss it. Or if you have anything for me to talk about, if you have anything, put it in the comments. If you like the video, and subscribe, man. I appreciate it. So, goodbye, family.